Al 1 de Mayo.
Hello and welcome to the Cindy Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Duesmay Jr. Follow me on the Elon app at The Cindy, that's TheESAMD. Podcast is also up there at The Cindy Podcast, all one word. If you're no longer down with the Elon app, trust me, I get it. You can follow along at The Cindy Podcast on the Zuckerberg app and the China app. Subscribe to the YouTube page. Link is in the description. Doing some good content over there, pushing out some short form and long form and live streams. So be a part of the community. Hit up the link at The SamD on YouTube. For all content, audio and visual, hit up thesamd.com. Subscribe and rate to the Cindy Podcast. 5 stars, nothing less. Tell a friend. Podcast available on all major podcasting platforms. Musical production done by Mayfirst Music. Support him at soundcloud.com/Mayfirstmusic. It's time to have some big money talk. Y'all know how I like to do when it comes to the business side of sports. Y'all know how I like to get outside of the thing of just who won and who lost and how did we get there. I like to dive a little deep when it comes to, well, is there a reason why the wins and losses work the way that they work? Is it coaching? Is it front office? Is it organizational? Or is it the league? Or is it the sport in general? Well, let's tap into college athletics. This is going to be a heavy college athletic episode because I think that all the information, all the data, all the news that has come out that has interested me the most has been in the college ranks. So let's talk about off rip. Caitlin Clark. She broke the scoring record. She's the all-time leading scorer in college basketball. She broke the record by Pistol Pete. And a lot has been made of the fact that she recently announced that she is going to enter the 2024 WNBA draft. There were a lot of folks that were caping saying that, she could come back and make even more buku bread off the NIL because she was awarded an extra year because she had the whole thing with the COVID year. So she was granted another year if she wanted to spin the block and go back to Iowa to hoop one more again. But at the end of the day, she decided, nah. And I firmly agree with that decision because do y'all understand that the NIL stuff doesn't just stop because you leave college? Like name, image, and likeness is the official term when you're a college athlete in this current system, a system that I think is about to go away completely. We'll tap into that a little bit later. But NIL doesn't just stop because you leave college and you now become a professional athlete. Your name, image, and likeness can continue to be monetized as you become a pro. So Caitlin Clark, who is going to be the number 1 pick. So not only is she going to be able to still make her bread, but she's also going to be able to be the number 1 overall pick. Now, could the teams that are at the top of the draft have influenced her wanting to come out and not wait another year? Let's tap in and see who was actually available. So you look at number 1 with a bullet, you're looking at Indiana. She plays in Iowa. Now, I know that's not terribly close, with like 6-7 hours apart. But when you're looking at it, Midwest, that's her core, that's her base. They are in love with her in the Midwest. Indiana has a number 1 overall pick in the WNBA upcoming draft. So it makes sense if you know without a doubt you're going to be the number 1 overall pick. You want to keep in that fan base, keep that fervor, or in this case, fever, because you're going to Indiana, keep that going. And now you're going to be able to continue to, capitalize and monetize that Midwest audience as you are now going to be the new messiah to save the game. Well, not necessarily save the game, but continue to enhance the game of the WNBA. So Caitlin Clark makes the decision. I'm out of here. I'm dropping 30 a night. There's really no comp for me out here. There's not much more I can accomplish. I broke the record, all the records. People are out here caping for me saying that, I'm the greatest player to ever play women's college basketball, as if Cheryl Miller never played. But the fact of the matter is that it's all positive when it comes to Caitlin Clark, and she's got the push. And she's going to continue getting the push because, let's be real, she looks the part. And the reason why I say she looks the part is because let's look at this draft here. When you talk about the two marquee players that are going to come out in this upcoming draft, for myself, I think automatically Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Well, here's the deal. Let's do this mock draft here thanks to tankathon.com, right? Let's go ahead and do the mock draft. Okay, Caitlin Clark, number 1 to Iowa. That makes sense. Number 2, no Angel Reese. Number 3, no Angel Reese. Number 4, no Angel Reese. Number 5, no Angel Reese. Now, again, this isn't like these players are chump. These players are all recognizable names, but in terms of star power, Angel Reese has more star power than all these players listed, except for Caitlin Clark, and in some communities, probably more so than Caitlin Clark. But we have Angel Reese going all the way down to 7. 7. Who's that? The Lynx? I think that's the Lynx. So the second most, if you want to be conservative, the second most recognizable popular player in the women's college basketball game is going to go 7th, while the number 1 most recognizable women's college basketball player is going to go number 1 overall. Make that make sense. Okay, so that's where I'm coming with it, because you can't tell me that the women's college basketball game, and more importantly, the WNBA, it needs a boost, right? Every year we keep waiting for the person that's going to come in and transcend that sport to get it to where people who are hoop fans and enjoy the game of basketball want it to be. Unfortunately, in some cases, some things just hold tried and true. And right now, based off this mock draft, and there are others that have similar things. I haven't seen too many mock drafts that have Angel Reese going number 2. And to be quite honest, if you are the Sparks and you're LA, why wouldn't you take Angel Reese with that type of star power in that market? How else can you help build that game? And look, the Sparks have been a mainstay of the LA community ever since they came aboard. You know, with Lisa Leslie in them, and it continued on. They had Candace Parker. Like, they have had a penchant for getting marquee names in that LA market. Why wouldn't you take Angel Reese, number 2 overall? But I digress. We'll say that as we get closer and closer to the actual draft. But the fact of the matter is that there is money to be made, and it does not have to stop at the college level. This is just where it begins now. Before, it was dirty. It was amateurish. It was shamateurism. It was brown bag money. It was, gifting, your parents a tractor like in Blue Chips. It was things like that. Now you can be open and brazen with it. And that is what these athletes are able to capitalize on in this current day and age. Let's get into some of these right here. Caitlin Clark NIL deals are worth approximately $900K. Okay? $900K. That's just this year. Okay? $900K. Let's move on. Her evaluation, her estimated NIL valuation is $3.5 million. Okay? That's ranked 4th. Okay? Amongst all college athletes. Bronny's number 1, Shador's number 2, and Livy Dune is number 3. And if you really want to tap in, let's see if we can find that window. Do I have that here? Okay, so look what Nike did. I think this is actually pretty cool. For those who are on the audio side, I'll try to describe it as best as I can. But you have Caitlin, who has a full length. You know how Braun had the whole witness, like building length sign back in the day with Nike. So they did one of those for Caitlin, where she's shooting a shot on one building. Then you go up the block across the street, and then you have another building that has a hoop up, like she's shooting that shot from one building to the next. And that's how they're trying to, popularize and continue that ad campaign. Really dope visuals out here for Caitlin Clark. So Nike is putting that bread. So when you add in the fact that she has the NIL valuation at $900K just this year alone, valuation of 3.5 overall, and she's about to go be the number 1 overall pick in the WNBA. Now, the WNBA salary for her next year is going to be mid as hell. It's going to be like $76K, I believe, $76K for her rookie scale. But again, all the NIL stuff will continue. Like, I think she just signed $1 million deal with Panini. Is that what I saw earlier? She has $1 million deal with Panini. Let me see. Caitlin Clark has a new marketing deal. She has added Gamebridge as a sponsor, signing a multi-year deal. Gamebridge is an Indiana-based annuities company that also has the naming rights for Gamebridge Fieldhouse, the home of the Indiana Fever and Pacers. So again, she's already tied into this market. She's locking into the Midwest. She's going to be the queen of the Midwest. All Midwest everything is going to be Caitlin Clark. And I think at some point you're just going to have to understand that at the end of the day, with these athletes now being given a monicum of power, it's still not full power. And we'll get to Dartmouth and what they're trying to do being unionized in a second. But when it comes to these athletes and realizing their power, the NIL is still just a small piece because the universities are still not on the hook. These universities are still not paying athletes. They're allowing the public to think that an NIL means that college athletes are being paid, but the actuality is that NIL is only allowing boosters and sponsors to pay above the table or on the table instead of under the table like back in the day. That's the only thing that has changed. Universities are not paying college athletes. It's still just a scholarship and room and board. That's it, okay? Which leads me to Dartmouth. Dartmouth University, Ivy League and all that. They came out here and they unionized. Now, it's not in the sense of, oh, like a players union, like in the professional leagues. It's an actual brick and mortar union, okay? Like you're a construction worker or a labor force worker or a healthcare worker. It's a union to that extent. Some of the athletes have jobs on campus, work in the library, they're a tutor, etc. So they're getting checks directly from the school. So they are employees of the school. And their whole debate is, well, if the school could cut me a check to work in the library, to work in the cafeteria, why can't they cut me a check to go hoop? Why can't we have union benefits like other employees of the actual university? And they caved. These players are now unionized. And while it's not a players union per se, I think it's a step. Now, there's going to be pushback because right now they're only trying to get healthcare and benefits. If you get injured, better upgraded facilities and things of that nature, and therapy and things like that. They're fighting for bare minimum union benefits. They're not even hitting them with the wages yet. But this is the thing of you kind of sticking your toe in the water to testing the temperature. Like they're sticking their toe in the water to see how hot is this? Can we get this off? If I could get the toe in there, then maybe I could get the full foot in there. I get the full foot in there, then maybe I could get the leg in there and so on and so forth. That's what is happening with Dartmouth. Now, Northwestern tried this years ago in football, and it kind of came and went. They banded together, I believe it was like a decade ago. I think it was like 2013, 2014. And they tried this, and they had the same type of energy because, again, you're looking at schools that are known for their education, right? Dartmouth, obviously Ivy League. Northwestern is another one of those schools that is known for high level of education. These are the schools that are trying to, help the system be bridged to what it actually is. College athletics, especially in the three, but I'll say four for the sake of the argument, in the four sports that matter in this country, the four professional sports that matter in this country, the colleges act as a minor league system. And as long as that minor league system continues to exist in this way, where athletes are also students and they're not getting paid for the revenue that they're generating to these universities, you're going to have debates like this. It's going to continue to be ongoing, on and on and on. This is going to be one of those things that covers the bases. I think once the union thing gets going, if they don't get no static, I mean, they're getting some controversy and they're drumming up some press around it. But if they could get this through, I think the floodgates will start to open. All it takes is one. All it takes is one to see it all the way through. Free agency as a concept is really only about 50 years old. So imagine that. The concept of free agency in sports in general, in professional sports, is a 50-year-old concept. Now it's taking those 50 years to now break it down to the college ranks. I always talk about how the SEC made a $500 million, and that was a few years ago. Lord knows what it is now. So the money is being generated off the backs of athletes, off the backs of predominantly poor athletes. So why wouldn't you want to give them their fair share? Why must you be so egregious? Why must you be so greedy? These universities, I think, when I was talking about the college football championship, where we're breaking down all the money that is being spent by Power 5 blue chip schools. We're not even talking about a Dartmouth. We're not even talking about a Northwestern. We're talking about Michigan. We're talking about Texas. We're talking about Ohio State, and the big money, UW, the big money that's being spent just to keep the football program relevant in comparison to not only the rest of the sports, but the rest of the entire college. And how the football program needs to make money to keep everything else afloat. That sounds like your checks and balances need to be regulated if you need the football program to exceed and make the school be in the green or the black every year on paper. If the Michigan football team has to make a profit of $70 to $100+ million just so Michigan, the university, can see a profit, that's a problem for Michigan University. Why are you spending so much in other places? And what are you spending that money on? Whom are you spending that money on? And what is the ROI on that money if you always need the football team to be relevant to keep you in the green? These are real questions that are not being answered. And that's why you have situations like the one you have in Dartmouth. This is a real thing. When you look at what these kids are doing in terms of unionizing, this could be a real pivotal point in how we look at amateur athletics, college athletics, and the transition from making a college sport what it truly is at its core, which is a minor league sport, and then having that pivot to ultimately the professional ranks. I think this story is one we need to be very cognizant of because I don't see this going away anytime soon. If Dartmouth tricks this off, it'll be another school. Like the one thing I could say is that because of the information, because of no lie podcasts like this, because of other podcasts that talk about the other stuff that's not just wins and losses, that's not just out here trying to get clickbait by interviewing former players, giving stories, that's actually talking about the business of sport. The information is available. The information is out there. And I think the next generation, the next few generations, if they're paying attention, are going to be able to get this system righted. The whole thing with the NCAA football game. As much as people are hyped, now we're learning these dudes are only getting $600 for their name, image, and likeness. Now, while if you're the third string center on Tulane, that might be lit. But if you're Caleb Williams, what the hell is $600? Are people buying that game because they want to play as Caleb Williams or they want to play that game as a third string center from Tulane? Nick Saban has finally said the quiet thing out loud. He's now finally admitting that, yeah, the game had passed him by. Not necessarily the X's and O's, but the NIL. The NIL was kicking him in the ass, and he finally had to walk away and take his L on the way out. And when you look at this, and it's a very, very strong article. Now, again, he's talking to the Fort of the Network, and now he's getting a check from the Fort of the Network, so it makes sense that they would be the ones to get this direct information from him, right? But let's go ahead and read this, right? Nick Saban told the Fort of the Network that he felt his message with players wasn't resonating as well because of NIL and the transfer portal. So again, COVID struck, it turned sports, college sports, upside down. It allowed players to break out of their commitments and bounce because of all the stuff that was getting shut down, reassigned, canceled, rescheduled, etc., right? Then you have the concept of NIL, where you can't just stockpile all the blue chip, all the 4- and 5-star recruits. You can't just stockpile them and they just have to wait their turn. They can actually say, oh, I'm a 4-star. All right, I got 2 5-stars ahead of me, or you brought in another 4-star after me and you're going to give him run over me. All right, well, I'm out. That wasn't the case before. You just had to sit and take that. Or if you really were that gangster, you could transfer, but you would lose a year of eligibility, right? So the transfer portal and the NIL, that combination was enough for Nick Saban to say, I'm good, love, enjoy. I'm out. I can't do this. I can't compete. I can't stockpile. I can't load up and have the number 1 recruiting class or a top 5 recruiting class every single year. I can't do that no more. I can't keep up. And I think this is amazing because how many times do we get this transparency? Now, it certainly helps that he's retired, right? If he was fired, he wouldn't be saying this. If he was still coaching, he wouldn't be saying this. But because he's retired, he's walked away, he's considered the GOAT. All right, I could admit that at the end, the sport was kicking my ass. I could admit that the sport was throwing me L's that I wasn't used to taking. That's essentially what I'm getting from this article, is that he's finally admitting, which is something I've talked about. And look, it's no secret. Like, if you paid attention to the sport and paid attention to the rules and paid attention to how recruiting works, the transfer portal and NIL turned the whole sport of college football upside down. And Saban was a victim of it. Dabo the same. They both were out here very strident, arguing against the notion of NIL, and they weren't going to get involved with NIL. Dabo seems to be the only one still trying to stand on that type of time, but as you have seen, Clemson isn't held in the highest regard as they once were. Ever since he's been on that type of time of, I'm not going to bow down to NIL. He would give God an NIL deal, but not a 5-star. That's the type of time Dabo is on. Okay? And your man's Prime was out here talking the same type of talk. He was giving y'all that two-faced talk where he's talking about, I'm going to go get that Louis luggage, but he also not trying to go out here and play the NIL game as well. And then what happened? His son was running for his life the back half of his first season in Colorado and Boulder. Now all of a sudden, he's out here trying to go get linemen off the transfer portal and trying to get them NIL bags. He learned his lesson. And that's something Saban refused to do at his big age. And what Dabo, I don't know what Dabo's plan is, but if he wants to hang on there at Clemson, he's going to have to switch some things up as well. But the thing with Saban, like I said, he had the luxury of being transparent because his record is so immaculate. His records, his resume is so unattainable that he can admit the L at the end. Understand that this type of transparency you're not going to get from any other coach. You don't hear a lot of coaches saying on their way out or after they're out, yeah, the sport probably passed me by. For a dude that's at his big age, for a dude that was the highest paid coach up until the day that he walked away, to admit that the sport passed him by, that the transfer portal affected the way he could relate to players, that the NIL made it so that he couldn't just go into that bag of promising players, I can get you to the league. I can get to the league without you, coach. I'm also trying to get a bag. And for whatever reason, Tuscaloosa could not compete with getting the bags, unlike other places that decided to jump in right away, like Texas A&M, even though it didn't work in terms of W's, but they went out there and won every signing season because they put the bags up. College Station found the bread. Somehow Tuscaloosa couldn't. But this is just one piece of the Nick Saban thing because, he is supposed to be linking up with your man's Bill Belichick, another guy that's considered a GOAT, another coach that you can say, or you can argue the sport passed him by, and they're now going to link up and allegedly provide a second screen experience. I'll jump to the screen again real quick here. This is the thing, right? As you see here, former NFL quarterback Peyton Manning is looking to hire former Patriots coach Bill Belichick. Manning is recruiting the veteran NFL coach, renowned for his succinct and monotone press conference, to join Omaha Productions. And they're trying to look for that second screen experience. Now, I'm jumping ahead and saying, I think the plan here, because understand, Saban is already signed to the four-letter network. Peyton, the Mannings, already have a deal with the four-letter network through their company, Omaha Productions. Why wouldn't you take Belichick and Saban, who know each other? There's a damn 30 for 30 with Saban and Belichick, the two Bills. So they already have a relationship. Why wouldn't you now make that, I don't know if it'll be a third screen experience where you have Monday Night Football, and then you have the Manning cast, and then you have maybe the Bill cast, or maybe you do this now for Saturday Night Football when it comes to college? When it comes to college, is that something you want to see? If you have the big SEC game and you have Saban and Belichick giving you that second screen experience, is that something y'all want to tap into? Y'all let me know. But I think ultimately there's a reason why this is happening. There's a reason why Belichick is walking away. There's a reason why Saban walked away. It's because not only has the economics of their sport changed. When it comes to the NFL, it is so quarterback heavy now that someone like Belichick, I don't think, can exist in today's game. Someone like Belichick cannot exist in today's NFL because it's so QB driven. You can't get that off with some cute 3-4 schemes. Your zone blitzing, your strategies of using safeties like linebackers, all that stuff is cute, but it doesn't resonate in today's NFL. So if you're stuck in the mud to the point where you don't want to move off that, the game has passed you by. And I just talked about Saban. He could not compete with the NIL and the transfer portal. The sport had passed him by. So even though that their resumes are immaculate and impeccable, their legacies are intact. The fact of the matter is that these two giants, these two GOATs, the game passed them by. The finances changed, the schemes changed, the sport overall changed, how the sport is covered has changed. All of this is different. Now, how do you cash out? You cash out off your own name, image, and likeness. Nick Saban is doing the thing that he didn't want to be a part of in Tuscaloosa. He's cashing out on the four-letter network by using his own name, image, and likeness to get a bag in the media game. And Belichick, who, didn't like stars to be stars, wouldn't allow them to be stars. And when stars started to become stars with the Patriots, he would trade them a year early. When stars were ready or about to get paid, Belichick would be known. Ask Richard Seymour, Chandler Jones, the list goes on. Ty Law, Lawyer Malloy, the list goes on. You can even argue Brady is on that list. When stars are becoming too big of a star and the check has to be written, Belichick would get you about the paint. Now Belichick is cashing out on his own name, image, and likeness, again, allegedly now through Omaha Productions and Peyton Manning. It's time to have yet another conversation about how inept the NFLPA is, because allegedly they are in negotiations, they are in talks, and they have allegedly already agreed to an 18-game regular season. God damn, they just can't. Let's jump right into the screen. They just can't help themselves. They truly cannot help themselves. Now, again, is this the most trusted source? But this has been something that we have known was coming, and it looks like we are close. It seems NFL is going to push the NFLPA to agree to expand the season to 18 regular season games, allegedly per NBC, one of the league's broadcast partners. So 16-17. There was a lot of pushback from the players. There was a lot of pushback from the NFLPA. They were threatening lockout talks. There was talks of we need to rework the CBA. We need to get a bigger share of the revenue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Lighten up practices, lighten up OTAs, lighten up voluntary and mandatory workouts. And they got most of that. Now, what do you think the NFLPA is going to try to get from the league, get from the owners to get this 18th game off? Because you know it's happening. Whether or not this is actually factual as we speak today, we know this is a foregone conclusion, that this season where dudes are, having multiple car crashes, the impact of players hitting each other over and over and over is like having several car crashes a game. We're now going to do that 18 times instead of 17, instead of 16. There's not much more that the NFLPA can get from the owners. I've been very tough on the NFLPA, deservedly so. As a former union person, a shop steward, all that type of stuff, I know what it is to have to negotiate with CEOs and owners, and I know what it is to have to fight for a workforce. And every time I read into negotiations, or I know people that have been privy or a part of the negotiations that go on between the NFL and the NFLPA, all I keep hearing is they just caved. And while ultimately that may be a position that comes up in negotiations, in every negotiation, there's a winner and a loser. My thing is, it always seems to be like the players are a landslide loser in every negotiations with the NFL. If you're going to allow your workforce to continue to get beat up at a rapid rate where players are now retiring after 1 year, players are not playing 10 years anymore because their bodies are getting that much more beat up, and they now have some common knowledge of what it is when you stay too long. We all seen the clip of Earl Campbell walking, okay? No one wants to be that. No one strives to be that. For most people, there's not an amount of money worth being like that at the end of your life. Unfortunately, though, when it comes to these negotiations, it's about a thing called leverage. And what leverage do the players have? The only leverage the player has is the only leverage a worker has, and that is to stop working. I can threaten to not work. I can walk out. I can strike. I can do this. I can do that. The problem is that we keep saying that. We keep wasting breath saying that, and these players continuously show us they have no intentions of doing just that. The last real lockout only was taken seriously because it was frontline QBs that were with the shits. Drew Brees, scammer them day that he was actually on the front lines fighting for player rights. Now, selfishly his own rights, but still as a symbol of the workforce, that was huge to have a Pro Bowl QB. I don't know if he was a Super Bowl winning QB at that point yet, but at least bare minimum, a popular Pro Bowl QB standing on the front lines, towing the line. We have seen quarterback salaries rise astronomically. Now, if you keep your third eye open, if you want to get your Kai Irvin on, you can say that once the owners saw that QBs joined the lockout all them years ago, they realized if we're going to take care of anybody, it better be them QBs. And if you notice, anytime there's a whiff of a lockout, a strike, or anything in terms of tough talk from a player perspective towards owners in the league, it is never a top flight QB. The only most strident thing Patrick Mahomes has ever said to the league has been, hey, admit that y'all were wrong about Kaepernick. That's about it. When it came to that bread, he took the standard contract that everyone else takes, even though he is an unprecedented Michael Jordan-esque figure in this league. He is that much more important to the league than the league is to him, right? So much so that, as I've been telling y'all here for over a year now, his own boss has told him he'll never earn his true earning potential because he can't pay him what he's actually worth. And we'll get to the Hunt family in a minute here. But I just want to get into the sense of the players and what they can do. The only thing they can do is to be serious when it comes to talk about walking out. When the running backs had that Zoom last offseason, and it was your Ecklers, your Saquons, your Josh Jacobs, and all of them on the Zoom trying to navigate, they are pricing us and squeezing us out of the league. How can we combat this? That's what needs to happen tenfold. That's what needs to happen league-wide. But if you don't got them QBs in the fold, how's that going to happen? Do you think the league really cares if the running backs and safeties get on a Zoom talking about how they're being marginalized? Do you think the league really cares about linebackers and offensive linemen like that if they jumped on a Microsoft Teams meeting? They would only care if Mahomes and the rest of that ilk got on a Zoom. The problem is when you're Mahomes and you've already gotten a check for 500 M's and you allegedly might have another 250 or more on the way. When you're Lamar and you've already cashed out. When you're Jalen Hurts and you've already cashed out. When you're Kyler Murray and you've already cashed out. When you're A-Rod and you're already cashed out. Every top-tier QB, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, all of them have cashed out. Who's going to step up and take that mantle and say, you know what? We paid, but you need to pay our mans in them. And unfortunately, amongst this QB class, because I thought Lamar had a chance. Lamar had a chance, didn't do it. He made sure to get his bread, even though he tried to buck the system and get the contract and continue the trend that Nasty Man and Kirk Cousins got off. Ultimately, he caved, and he took the standard contract. And just the trend continues. Whoever's next up is your next time. Who is it now? Trevor Lawrence? Trevor Lawrence is next one up. He's going to be the next highest paid QB. So until the most important position in the sport, which has been pushed to the forefront and paid handsomely, until they look back and take care of their own, of course, the league is going to get to an 18th game. They might even end up getting to 20. And while we are fanatics, and you know how I feel about fandom is a mental illness. We are fanatics for the sport. And we'll be locked in on 20 games. Will we ultimately look back and think, was that enjoyment worth what's going to happen on the back end to these guys who are playing? When you look at the influx of all the gambling money, every sports book is in the game. People are creating sports books and cashing out and, making a deal with these leagues and running the bags up. And yes, players are getting a portion, but the leagues, as usual, are getting the lion's share. Going to 18 games, and who's to say they can't get to 20, right? Are they doing this at the cost of their workforce? Are they just at this league that brings in and generates $27 billion in revenue? A lot of that comes from the gambling space. A lot of that comes from the sports books and the partnerships and the cut of the wages and the parlays and the futures and all that stuff, right? Are we getting to the point where the league is so blinded by this new influx of cash where the salary cap, let me look this up. I think I have the screen here. Where is it? The bread. Let me see, where's the article? The cap has rose 30, I'll round up, 30.6 mil is 31 million in my book, 31 million to a record 255 million per team. Okay, so the influx of cash from not only streaming As you know, they got 100 mil just off Amazon in that wild card game alone. Or was that Peacock? I think it was Peacock, but Amazon is now lining up. They want a playoff game, and they're going to have to pay that 100 M's because that's now the bar now. So, like, the influx of cash is evergreen. It's infinite as of right now. I think there will be a time where the bread won't be so crazy, but for the foreseeable future, the bread is infinite, right? When you're looking at the influx of all this new money, whether it's streaming money, broadcast rights money, and now gambling money, to what extent are they going to sacrifice the workforce to continue to keep cashing out? And this isn't just me saying this. This is dudes that are on NFL payroll saying this. Your man Thibodeau is out here, and he's airing it out. Extra game equals more sports betting. No shit, Sherlock. But factual, right? Extra game. And now this is just to get to 18. I'm saying it's probably going to end up getting to 20 at some point, but this is just to get to 18. Extra game equals more sports betting. He goes on. Why would we settle for an extra week off rather than a profit share? So he's already telling you. Now remember, I asked in the beginning of this segment, what is the league? What's the NFLPA going to try to get from the league? If we're reading the tea leaves here of what Thibodeau was putting out here, it's settling for an extra week off. So 2 bye weeks. So 18-week season with 2 bye weeks. Why would we settle for an extra week off rather than a profit share? So he wants more bread. He doesn't want an extra week off. He's willing to put his body again on the line with only 1 week off in an 18-game season for some extra bread. He's willing to do that. He continues, win, lose, or draw, owners and NFL personnel make money off gambling. Let's talk about it. And that's factual, but it's also factual that players also get a cut, albeit a very small percentage of that bread as well. Okay? So let's not act like the players don't get none of that. When it comes to that $27 billion in revenue, that's the entire pie, and there is revenue sharing within that pie. I think he wants more of the profit share, is what I would hope Thibodeau is saying. Now, hoping he's not trying to say they don't get none of it, which is just not true, right? So I asked, what are they going to try to get? He's putting out here, or he's letting it fly, that it seems like what's on the table is we'll give you an extra bye week. Do you think, now again, take your fandom out of it, take you being a sports bettor out of it, take being a fantasy football player out of it. Let's just keep it baseline. Your employer, your boss, wants to work you more. And they're willing to give you a week off. Let's say it's an extra day. They want you to go to a 6-day work week. Right? Now, technically, that'll be hard to give an extra day off, but let's say they stagger it, right? We want you to work twice a month, a 6-day work week. But in return, we'll give you an extra day off on the weeks where you don't work a 6-day work week. So no extra bread, but we'll give you a 3-day work week twice a month if you give us a 6-day work week twice a month. How many of y'all going to take that deal? Let me know. Would you give up a day off for 1 week to get an extra day off the next week and be good with it? Like, that's it going forward. There's no, this is just for a short time frame. No. This is it evergreen into the future. How many of y'all would take that trade? Or how many of y'all would ask for some extra bread? I know ideally we would ask for both, but we know that this is a negotiation. You ask for 2 things, you're probably going to end up getting 1. So, what are you doing? You want the time off or you want the bread? Thibodeau's letting it be known he wants the bread. He don't give a damn about no extra time off. The NFL continues to be nasty. The NFL continues to be nastier than the nasty man in Cleveland, as now it is the offseason, and that means NFL teams are going to get to cutting. Even though the salary cap has gone up $30 million for every single team next year. Teams are cutting and slicing these rosters and getting a lot of money up off that cap. And are they actually going to spend that money? Unlikely. But let's talk about some of the moves that we have seen. So the New York Giants had Saquon. They used up Saquon as much as they wanted, and now he's done. They are not going to use the franchise tag on him for a second year in a row. They're going to let him be an unrestricted free agent for the first time. There's talk of the Eagles. There's talk of a lot of different teams vying to be in the mix. The Texans are a team that's been bountied out there. So there's a lot of suitors for Saquon, but the fact of the matter is that he's probably not going to get 15, 16 M's a year. He's probably going to have to settle for that 14 mil range. And ultimately, when you're a player that's thought to be in high degree, like a Saquon Barkley, you would think he could be a top tier back when it comes to pay scale. That is not the case. That's the whole point of him wanting to hold out or sit out or threaten to sit out last year when he got the franchise tag last year. It's going to come down to, like I've been preaching on this episode and for sure other episodes, the players are going to have to stand 10 toes down at some point. The running backs got close sitting on that Zoom, but players like Saquon folded, came in and took the bread. He restructured his contract to try to make it more incentive-based. And I don't know how many of them incentives he hit, but he damn sure didn't hit half of them. I can tell you that for a fact. He didn't hit at least half of them. So he struck out last year. He bet on himself and he took a loss, and now he's looking for a gig. And I don't know if any team's going to give him like a long-term deal. He might get a couple of years, 2 to 3 years. But do you realistically see a team giving a running back with some tread on that tire? What's he, 26, 27 years old? And he's battled through some injuries already. Had a lot of carries at Penn State already. Are we really going to sit here and think that a team is going to give him a 4 or 5 year deal? With the way that the running back position has been marginalized already? I don't see it. But the fact that Saquon went out there and he talked tough. Remember, they had that press conference out there in Jersey City, I believe. He was talking tough about, he wants to be respected. The Giants are not, basically they're playing with his livelihood, et cetera, et cetera. And then he went bowing down and took whatever bread that they offered him. They came to him with a contract that was trash off rip. They came to him and they offered him a contract that was an insult to anyone that could read intelligence. But yet he didn't want to let his team down. We're fresh off a playoff run. He tried to drink the Kool-Aid of the whole Daniel Jones run from the year before. And he bought in. And then the Giants reverted back to being the team that ultimately deep down, y'all knew, I've been new, but y'all knew they were last year. And now he's out. He's without a job and without a team. And he's not the only one. It's a bunch of guys that have been left out here. Micah Parsons. The Cowboys have exercised the 5th-year option on star pass rusher Micah Parsons. They are designating him, though, as a edge rusher, as a defensive end, rather than a linebacker. And by doing so, this saves them $3 million for 1 year. So, arguably, the most important player on the team, certainly the best player on the team, and the Cowboys are finding a way to circumvent even his bread when they got him at the cheapest they can already because he's still on his rookie deal. Now let's take a look at how much bread the Cowboys have to spend in terms of cap space and tell me, do you think it was worth it to take your best player, your most important player, and short him $3 million? Let's go ahead and look this up here. Where is the spot track? All right, cool. Okay, so the Cowboys cap space, they're $4 million over the cap, right? This is before they make any cuts. This is before they move some money around or restructure, et cetera, et cetera. This is just the straight hard contract data. $4 million over the cap. So let's play the game and say they don't cut nobody. They keep the exact roster. We know they're not, right? But let's play that game out. That still ain't enough money to keep them from being over the cap. And be that as it may, because we all know Dak wants his bread, right? Be that as it may, even if we were to go along with the story and there's still $1 million over the cap, they are the highest valued franchise in the country. Jerry got it. So whatever cap space or luxury tax or hard cap nonsense they're going to try to sell you, it's null and void. Because at the end of the day, there's capologists for a reason. There's accountants for a reason. There's treasurers for a reason. The bread is there. If there's any franchise that can eat $1 million over the cap, it's the Dallas Cowboys, okay? But the fact of the matter is you have Dak who wants his bread. You know Micah and his people are working to try to get their bread. And everything is going to come to a point where the Cowboys are going to have to choose. Even though, again, they got an extra $30 million in cap space, they're still out here trying to short Micah Parsons $3 million. Make that make sense to me. You're going to pinch pennies on your best player. You're going to pinch pennies on your most important player to save $3 million when you just got an extra 30 in cap space. Insane what's going on in the NFL right now. To continue on, Micah Parsons could file a grievance arguing that he should be classified as a linebacker, but the reality is that he's highly unlikely to play under the fifth-year option in 2025. Anyway, Parsons is eligible for an extension as early as its offseason, and there's no chance. Now, most of this is editorial, but this is opinion. There's no chance he would step on the field in 2025 without a record-breaking new deal. So obviously, as I just said, they're working on a new deal. It would be silly if they weren't working on a new deal. But the fact of the matter is that they're trying to cut corners in pursuit of a new deal is still nasty work to me. That's not negotiating in good faith. I'm going to short you this $3 million, but I got you on the back end. Again, there is no guaranteed contracts. There are no fully guaranteed contracts in the National Checkdown League. Not negotiating in good faith. I'm not surprised because it's Jerry. But when you look at this is not negotiating in good faith. This is not taking care of your star. The only actual star on that roster. This is not how you should be negotiating with him. We'll move on. We talked about running backs being marginalized last year, and it kind of became a popular talking point as people finally started paying attention. Is the safety position the next to be marginalized? With the Broncos releasing Justin Simmons earlier today, who was a top-tier guy, former four-time All-Pro. Look at all these safeties, and for the audio audience, I'll try to read some of these names, but there's a lot of names. But the free agent safety market, there's a lot of dudes out here. Xavier McKinney, Justin Simmons, we just talked about Eddie Jackson, Kevin Byard, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Quadre Diggs, Jamal Adams. Like, there's a lot of names out here. Jordan Whitehead, Jordan Fuller. Like, there's a lot of safeties that are more than serviceable that are available. Now, what happens in a market like this is when you have so many dudes out here, no one's going to get a real bag unless you find a sucker. If you find a sucker, all bets are off. But when you have this many dudes, like, oh, well, you don't want to take this contract? Well, there's literally 15 other safeties out there. You don't want this bread? We'll go offer it to so-and-so. Eddie Jackson, you don't want this bag? Okay, I'm going to go offer it to Micah Hyde. So it's going to make it competitive, and that means dudes are going to have to take most likely either right on the line of market value or more than likely below market value. What other position has had to do that lately? Safeties might be becoming the running backs when it comes to demonetizing their value. Is the NFLPA going to step up and say anything? They've already allowed running backs to be eradicated Are they now going to allow safeties to be eradicated next? To wrap things up, we got to get into this draft. This draft is coming up. I'm going to be doing some content like I did last year, where we're going to be leading up to the draft, and I'm going to be doing some live streams, hopefully, tentatively. At least you'll be getting pods for sure. But I'm going to also try to get some live streams that have some guests lined up to be able to come in and break down some of these upcoming college plays. Because I don't try to gas y'all up and tell y'all I'm an expert on college football. I know enough, and I know football really, really well. So I combine those things to craft my knowledge. But I'm going to be bringing some people on who are like-minded as well, who are going to be able to break down some of these players and break down some of these teams and what they should get, needs, all that type of stuff. So, but what we're looking at here is the draft order. I'll go to the full order first. I did have the actual mock draft up, but the team of my youth, the team of my adolescence, the team of my young adulthood, the Chicago Bears, do have the number 1 overall pick. And they have a quarterback in the tuck. And there's a bunch of quarterbacks that are at the ready with the number 1 overall pick. What should they do? Well, here's the issue. And I'm not going to go too crazy into it, but just a little teaser as we head into draft season. The Chicago Bears only have 5 picks. So a roster that is talent deprived. A roster that has holes on both sides of the ball. They traded down last year and recouped a bunch of picks, yet they gave away a bunch of picks in the process, and now they only have 5 picks. They have a 2 first, their own pick, and the Panthers pick, so number 1 and number 9. They do not have a second round pick. Thank you, Chase Claypool. Or was that the Washington deal? Was that the Washington deal? Let's see. Where is that at? Yes, that was the Washington deal. So Montez Sweat, who was worth it? So I'll give Ryan Poles a pass there, right? Chase Claypool, second round pick was a year before. Okay, so 2 first, no seconds, 1 third, 2 fourths, and that's it. Okay. So a roster that is talent deprived, a roster that has weaknesses on both sides of the ball, only has 5 picks, and a draft that most people say are deep at quarterback, receiver, and lineman. Now, the lineman part, I'm still trying to decipher. You can even throw in linebackers a little bit there as well. But I know for sure it's deep in quarterbacks and receivers. And those are 2 areas for sure where the Bears could upgrade. Now, Justin Fields, should he remain a Chicago Bear? Unless you get blown away with an offer similar to last year where you could trade down a little bit, recoup some extra picks in the future, et cetera, then I stay the course and take whatever QB I want at 1 and then take whatever receiver that is still on the board at number 9. That's what I would do if I'm the Chicago Bears, right? That's if I'm really trying to be gangster with it. If you want to be wild with it, you could say, I'm going to keep Justin Fields, ride out the length of the contract. I'm going to take Marvin Harrison, number 1. So that way, Justin Fields, on his last year, a contract year, a potential walk year, would have Marvin Harrison and DJ Moore. And let's see how that cooks up. And then at number 9, if you want to take a QB, now there's a lot of talk of where the QB is going to go. Is it going to be the first 3 picks? Is it going to be over the first 10 picks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? I think you could make a legitimate case where you take Marvin Harrison, number 1, because to a lot of people, he still is the best overall player in this draft. And then at number 9, if one of those QBs is still there, now whether you're a Jaden Daniels guy or I don't know if Drake May will be there. Drake May is kind of up and down people's boards right now. And J.J. McCarthy somehow is rising up in boards, but I think we all know what type of time that is. But there's a lot of QBs. There's a potential that one of the top 3 QBs could slide. And if that's not the case, then there could be a fourth QB, depending on who you like, that could be there for the Bears at number 9. Now, y'all know how I feel about the Bears tricking off the 9th pick last year, taking the right tackle when Jalen Carter, the defensive lineman, was right there. Was not happy about that. Again, even though my fandom is done, I just don't like seeing stupid football moves being made like that. The Bears are back in the 9 position again. They have the number 1 overall pick. Are they going to be stupid and trade Justin Fields, draft Caleb Williams at 1, and then go and try to fortify the line yet again? Because again, their GM is a former lineman. Ryan Poles is a former lineman. Could they go ahead and take another lineman at 9? If the Bears walk out of there with Caleb Williams and a lineman at 9, that would not help anything because the weapons are still not there. And that's the problem in Chicago. That is the absolute problem in Chicago. So let's look at the mock draft. And again, this is not factoring in any trades whatsoever. So you have Caleb Williams being taken number 1, and then who at number 9? You have Rome from UW. I'm not mad at that. At least it's a weapon. It's a receiver. So now you're going with DJ Moore, Rome, and Caleb Williams. Although to me, I really think you have to think outside the box. When you have these 2 first-round picks, I think you have to strike big. If you take Marvin Harrison, number 1, at least one of those quarterbacks is fallen unless the Giants make a move at 6. If you take Caleb at number 1, if you take Marvin Harrison number 1, right, then the Commanders, they're taking a QB no matter what. You would think the Patriots are going to take a QB no matter what. Now you're looking at the Cardinals, even though they did the kiss of death by putting Kyler Murray on their social media, like how they did Josh Rosen, then they eventually traded him. I don't feel that's the similar story here. So I think they do not take a quarterback here. Now they could trade back to a team that does. Maybe the Giants try to leapfrog, although it wouldn't make sense because we know the Chargers are not going to trade for a QB, but they might trade out to a team who would. So the Giants may have to hop up there. And apparently they're out on Daniel Jones, which, I mean, how many more years was it going to take? And they paid him a bag. Not the similar bag to all the other QBs, but still, he's getting $80 million guaranteed. Nasty contract. If you're ever going to cut a contract and do a Russell Wilson, I would eat that dead money real fast if I was the Giants. Just cut Daniel Jones. Because why? Why not? If 2 teams could pay Russell Wilson, if 2 teams could eat $111 million in dead cap space for Russell Wilson, why won't the Giants eat about $80 million to get Daniel Jones off their cap, off their roster? Like if you're talking, let's see, let's do a big board here. Let's do QBs. All right, so to the audio-only audience, we're talking Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May are the big 3, right? Those are the big 3 quarterbacks. Then you have your J.J. McCarthy from the world champion or national champion Michigan Wolverines. Got Bo Nix, the immortal one or the ageless one. Michael Penix Jr., another ageless one. And then you got Michael Pratt from Tulane, right? Now, I think you could even throw what's my man's, who was from on the Netflix, John? Spencer Rattler. I think you could throw Rattler in here. Like, I think you could have some QBs toward that bottom out. This website only gets the top 100, but I think you could definitely get some guys out here outside of this top 7? Top 7 QBs. So they have Caleb Williams, Daniels, May, McCarthy, Nix, Penix, and Pratt. If you're the Bears, you could make a case where you take Marvin Harrison at 1, and then if you really like J.J. McCarthy, that would be a Bear thing to do. Take him at 9, or you can try to leverage Justin Fields for some second-round pick action and try to get some second-round picks, and now you're talking a Bo Nix, a Penix. At that age, my thing is, no matter who the QB is, that roster needs weapons. No matter who the QB is, whether it's Justin Fields or whether it's one of these rookies, There needs to be an upgrade in the weapons and how you can look at Marvin Harrison staring right there at you. And not just him, but his father staring right at you and not take him is wild to me. You take Marvin Harrison Jr. number 1, and then you figure everything else out after that. Yes, I know the league is QB driven. Yes, I know you can't win without a quarterback. I understand all of that. The thing about it is that either you're going to have Justin Fields in a walk year put up crazy numbers with Harrison and DJ Moore. And either you pay him the bag or you have a QB waiting in the tuck, whether you get him with that second first rounder or you use some collateral and get a second rounder. However you do it, it needs to be done. The thing about it is, how can you look past a weapon when your roster is depleted on both sides of the ball of weapons? But let's look at some of the alleged trades. There are trades that the Bears are, TV people have pondered about. If the Commanders wanted to move up from second to first, the potential cost looks like it could be a second overall pick, which is obvious, a third, a fifth, and next year's first. If I'm the Bears, do I give up that to move one spot back? Do I get all of that for moving one spot back? A third, a fifth, and a first, a next year's first. And you would assume that first will probably be a top 10 pick because you would assume Washington will not be that good next year, even with Caleb Williams or whoever they take at number 1 if they make that deal. Or we can look at third. Do you give up the chance to for sure lock in Marvin Harrison Jr. or Caleb Williams and move down to third, and in doing so, get a second rounder this year, a first next year, and a third in 2026? That trade sounds nasty. I can't do that Patriot one. At least the Washington one, I could probably talk myself into it. That Patriot one, a first next year, a second this year. So I do like the prospect of having a second, but a first in 2025. So the Bears would go from having 5 picks to 6 picks, an extra first next year and an extra third the year after that in 2026. I would probably lean more towards the Washington deal, to be quite honest with you. But that's what we're looking at. The draft for the second year in a row depends on what the Bears decide to do. Everything will open itself up once the Bears and Ryan Poles figure out what the move is. Is it Justin Fields? Are you going to flip him? Are you going to use that collateral that you get for him to try to do other things in this year's draft? Because again, 5 picks in a draft that's deep in the spots you have weaknesses at. Speaking of teams that have weaknesses at quarterback position, the Atlanta Falcons, new coach Raheem Morris was very honest at the combine. If we, the Falcons, had better quarterback play, I may not be standing here. He's not lying. If Arthur Smith wasn't married to a conservative scheme, if Desmond Ridder wasn't so mid, yes, Raheem Morris probably is not the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. And I think that's where you're looking at another team in the Falcons who need to figure out what they're going to do. And where is their draft? Where are they picking at? They're picking at 8, right above Chicago. They should be in the mix for a quarterback. There will be some that would tell you they should be in the mix for, another receiver. There's certainly a lot of those. You could argue they could use some linemen. So if somehow Joe Alt slides, that could be a spot. Right here in this mock draft, they have Joe Alt going 7. But there's definitely some tackles. So Atlanta should be in a position here, and they only have that 1 pick, right? They don't have 2 picks in the first round. No, they do not. Yeah, if I'm Atlanta, and you're really trying to switch things up and push the envelope, you're really going to have to try to navigate. Obviously, the QB position is a weakness, and at least Raheem is man enough to admit that. But unfortunately, I'm not sure how they go about this. If they get Kirk Cousins in free agency, that obviously opens things up to where they can like relax a little bit because Kirk got at least another 2 to 3 years in him. But if they don't get Kirk Cousins and if they don't make a deal for Justin Fields, then what do you do if you're the Atlanta Falcons at 8? I mean, last year they rolled the dice and took Bijan Robinson, running back. What are they going to do if they decide not to go get Kirk Cousins, if they decide not to pursue Justin Fields like they have in years prior, where they proclaimed to the world instantaneously as soon as the news was announced that they're not going to pursue Lamar Jackson. And then the year before, they did not pursue nasty man Deshaun Watson. So what are they going to do if it's not that? And then just to close the book on Daniel Jones and why I think the Giants should really consider doing like the Broncos and eating that dead money and just getting him off that roster. Daniel Jones completed just 12 of 36 passes thrown over 10 yards last year. 12 of 36. His 33% completion rate was the worst of any QB who was their team's week 1 starter since 2020. Of the 129 QBs with 35 plus attempts the last 3 years, he ranked, now again, this is out of 129 QBs, he ranked 128th in completion percentage. He ranked 127th in success rate, and he ranked 124th in EPA per attempt. But keep telling me about Dayball and the playoff run a few years ago. Keep telling me about it. Just because the Mannings put the call in and said, holla at my mans from Duke who went to my camp and you fell for it, doesn't mean you have to stay married to it. Eli will eventually forgive you. He forgave you for Geno, right? Right? Anyway, I will leave y'all on that note. You know what it is. Appreciate y'all for listening. Tap into the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Tap into the podcast, the audio-only podcast. If you haven't, subscribe and rate. 5 stars with a Let's Tell a Friend. Definitely gonna be getting into some more draft stuff. Basketball people, I got y'all. Don't worry about it. We back now. Just trying to get out of, sometimes you overthink stuff. I want it to be like this, or it has to be perfect, Trying to just get out my head and just go. I think that's where I have to get to. We're getting there. It's a process. Everything is a process. This is a real process, not that bullshit one in Philly. So I appreciate y'all, as always, for listening, tapping in, reaching out, sending me stuff that y'all want me to talk about. Continue to do that. DMs are open, all that good stuff. I will holler at y'all again next week. I may have a guest and we'll get into some draft stuff, more draft stuff, hardcore analysis type draft stuff. So if that is your bag, tap in. We'll definitely get into some basketball as well. So stay locked in. I'm back again next week with another episode for the Sandy Podcast. I'm Sandy Dusemay Jr. I'm out.